How are you?
I'm not.
I'm Leona. Oh, sure. Was I not supposed to come in until the door was open?
No, not at all. The door was open when I came, and I specifically just closed it. I completely forgot that. So really, you've done the okay. I'm super friends. Aw, friend. How are you doing?
Oh, that's all right. I think I'm fine. I'll hug you. Sometimes you just need to hug you when you're not well.
Yes. No one is too
Sorry,
complicated.
no.
No one should know. No one should be refused to hug. Yes, they are.
Everybody's still chatting. This is what happened yesterday. It's like they need somebody up there going, it's time. Get down there. Yeah. Is this intimidating?
No, it's incredibly hard. I'm also a bit sad.
Have you ever got dinner plans?
I don't. I can have.
Hey?
I can have.
Yeah, I was just saying, I messaged you, but I don't think you checked that. I don't know if I still have your WhatsApp. But if you want to join Dave and I, we don't know what we do.
If for any reason I can, probably.
Yeah.
My life, by the way.
In a hug as well.
Maybe.
Should we do it again?
They need to like demonstrate a camaraderie that comes from each other. I think it's the inside of the congestion. It's a nice meeting.
I love to eat Bangkok. I'm like, I'm agitated and it's not supposed to. It's different. Yeah. Everybody's just like, why am I here? I really see your airways are okay.
That's okay. Got to my sin, we'll see.
Oh. You seemed fine earlier.
It's wonderful yesterday. Yesterday was
Oh, that's what you said.
Oh, hello, friend. Thanks so much for turning up at 3:45, friends.
Yes. Some of this are good.
We're excited to learn.
I'm Ruth. What's your name?
Lady?
Lady.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
and this
meet
is Lorna.
Leona, sorry.
Leona.
Leona.
Hello,
How you
Lady,
going?
yes.
I loved the discussion. I'm so glad that we had accidental breakfast with you the other day because the stories are mostly excellent.
Oh.
I was the lady.
Yeah, I know you. Thanks for asking. I know us about the organization.
No, I just need to smile.
Yeah, I really have to get back to Alex to recontact you guys.
Okay, good. Please. Yeah, no, it's so how do you think, was it like too much?
No.
Probably no.
I was in break session.
Oh.
I saw your coffee corner.
That's really
Tuesday.
fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it was you, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, some of the organization did a GLC talk.
Okay.
And that's how I'm going to
No, I thought it was very, very actually. Well, I'm also really easy to understand. Very helpful from like a standpoint of like a team leader who would be directing my staff to do something. And actually, you know, our organization is very small, but I see immediately how it's really beneficial for our clients, specifically in the counseling space. It looks to me like having another case partner who's
Yeah.
So I just thought this is phenomenal.
Oh, I'm glad.
Really,
Yeah.
really
Yeah, we can.
So I've already sent the position to my team to be like, hey, check this out. Let's investigate this.
And you, I think you have my card.
Yes.
Okay.
Just a friend of mine says me dogs sleep twice a week. So much. She just posted
Yeah.
juices marketing things for like
Incredibly striking. It's women that
Hello friends, how are we? Good, fantastic. This is a crowd participatory sort of workshop, so feel free to respond to any questions. We might just give it 1 or 2 minutes before we get right into it. Thank you for being here between 3:45 and 3:50.
Yeah. So it's really fun time.
It's really like.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great skills.
I think it's dangerous. It's useful.
Hello friends, how are we? Please respond. Fantastic. It's a big day. I don't know about you, but I know about me. I've learned a lot of new information. My brain has been processing how we solve the problem, what the system is in which this problem sits, and trying to feel all the feelings but not be overwhelmed by it. And when I was overwhelmed by it, a friend of mine, a new friend, advised that we go down to the wellness room and co-regulate together. So if you need to do that, please go. find a friend, hug, hold hands, colour. My name is Ruth. I'm so stoked that you're here. Today I'm actually really excited to talk about one of my favourite topics in the entire world, and that is how to build mutually enriching, values-aligned partnerships, particularly through fundraising. So let's dive in. My name is Ruth. I've just mentioned that. I head up an organisation based in Melbourne, Australia, called PLC Coaching and Consulting, where I have the privilege of walking alongside inspired individuals and organisations to build strategy and partnerships for impact. I'm so excited to be here. I'm working completely out of my mind. I'm very excited to be here and really grateful that we journey together in the next hour on this topic. My fundraising journey started in 2014 and since then has involved a variety of roles and a variety of organisations where I learned how to go from really awkward ask to joyful invitation. I've had the privilege of working in face-to-face fundraising, been on the phone, I've been able to cultivate relationships through a portfolio of strategic partners that's presenting, also fundraise to provide personal support for myself as I've spent some time, extended time in another country. So these principles are principles that I found to be really life-giving to me, and I really hope that they'll be really life-giving to you too. So let's dive in. This is an interactive workshop, friends. Everybody, yay! Great. So we're actually, throughout this presentation, we're going to be asking a variety of questions. So I invite you to respond. There are no right answers, there are no wrong answers, there are just responses to questions that are completely anonymous so that we can learn from each other in this room. So please grab your phones out, scan the QR code, and let's dive in. Alright, give me a thumbs up if you're in.
I'm the presenter.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Can everyone see this particular slide? Yes, fantastic. Okay, you've heard a little bit about my fundraising story. I would absolutely love to know which sentence above or which sentence below best describes your fundraising story. Would you say that, Ruth, oh my goodness, I love fundraising, it is the best thing ever? Would you say, look, Ruth, I'm growing in my skills and my confidence? Would you say I'm really awkward, but I'm curious to learn? Or would you say, hey, I'm actually find fundraising really hard and it's really overwhelming for me? Okay, fantastic. Thank you for your honest response, friends. Well, it's amazing because we're trying to move from awkward ask to joyful invitation, so it's a fantastic spot to be in. For those, okay, there's no one else who loves fundraising. I hope that will change. There are a few of us who, believe that we are growing in our skill set and our confidence in fundraising. That's fantastic. I hope that the time together today we'll be able to share some new insights, some new practical tools that will assist in that learning journey. For those of us who feel incredibly awkward but are curious to learn, welcome! I'm so glad you're here. And for those who feel that it's really hard and we feel overwhelmed, friends, you are not alone. You are not alone. And I hope that throughout this next hour or so, you'll feel supported and grow just a little bit more towards that joyful invitation. All right, let's dive into question number 2. Thanks so much for your honesty, friends. Where in your fundraising journey do you feel stuck? You're absolutely welcome to take a deep breath before you answer these. Where in your fundraising journey do you feel stuck?
You're not getting one word answers.
Yeah, oh. I hear someone said that We're not getting a one-word answer for this. Ah, okay. Okay. We feel fatigued. We feel like we're begging. Whew. We feel like there's a lot of competition out there. We're struggling with some clear messaging. Ooh, the problems keep building, don't they? A lack of time, winning applications, shame. Wow. And it seems like a few of us have said shame, because that's one of the bigger words up there. Yeah. Again, thank you so much for your honesty. And these are all very real challenges in everyone's individual fundraising story. And what I believe is that in life, not just in fundraising, but I believe that in life, our stories really shape our stories, and underlying some of these challenges, I believe, is a story that we live in, and therefore a story that we live out in relation to our fundraising. And so today, we're going to take some deep breaths, and we're going to remember, we're going to imagine, and then we're going to play. So we're going to remember from our own personal experiences, times in our own lives that have shaped how we see fundraising, how we see asking. Then we're going to reimagine those experiences. Again, we're going to take some deep breaths while we do that. And then we're going to play. What do I mean by that? Well, throughout our hour together, we're going to learn some practical principles that we can practice in our interpersonal relationships. And we're going to have the opportunity to turn to our old or new friends in this room and practice some of those principles. Again, there is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. We're just going to give it a go. So, as I've mentioned, we're going to learn principles for practice in interpersonal relationships. So today is not a session on how to build a multi-channel, a multi-year strategy for acquisition, retention, and growth. An hour would not do that justice. This is also not a session on grant applications or on where to actually find partners. What this is about is when you are chatting with someone, how can we engage in that conversation with integrity and respect in a way that understands what that person really cares about, what we represent as an organisation, to see if it's a good fit for us to build a relationship ongoing. All right. You're welcome to leave the room if you're looking for a multi-channel, multi-year strategy for acquisition and growth. All right. The principles we're going to talk about I found to be really powerful and beautiful in any sort of interpersonal connection, whether it's at a conference, we're chatting with someone on the phone, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's a virtual connection, because they're principles that are really inherent to how we all connect. And so fundraising is really, for me, about connection and authentic connection. All right, story. So here's where I'm going to invite you to remember a time when you ask someone for a favor. I'm going to invite us to close our eyes, if that helps, and take a few breaths, and remember a time when you asked someone for a favor. Where were you? What did you ask? Who did you ask? And how did you feel? Really take the time to just sit with that memory and let those feelings come up for you. Alright, I'm going to invite us to come back into the room. Quiet your phones, I'd love to know Who did we ask? Friend, a family member, parents. We've got a few people asking friends for a favour. Okay, we've also asked lawyers for favours. So we've asked a bunch of different people for favours. Colleague, government officials. Gosh, I'd like to know who's asking government officials for favours. Alright, done. We're going to move on. How did you feel about asking for this favour? How did you feel? Yeah, wow, thanks for your honesty. Yeah. A few of us felt ashamed, vulnerable, embarrassed. Don't know what OK means. But it seems like there's a lot of feelings that can be overwhelming. Some of us felt hopeful, which is great to know. But a lot of us are wrestling with some challenging feelings. Yeah. Reluctant, anxious, awkward, ashamed, and vulnerable. Thanks for going there, friends. Really grateful for your honesty and your courage. We're going to move to our next slide now. I'm curious, in terms of us feeling nervous and ashamed and awkward, what made you feel ashamed, awkward, or nervous about asking for this favour? Describe in one sentence. They might say no. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's hard, yeah. Feeling like a failure for needing help. With the person we were asking. And then just a whole bunch of other reasons that we felt uncomfortable about asking for a favour. Some of us didn't want to be reliant on others. We felt like we were a bother, that they might feel pressured to say yes. And some of us just find it hard asking for help. Some of us definitely find it hard asking for help. Okay. Yeah. So this is a shared experience that we all have about asking for a favour, feeling uncomfortable and awkward, and feeling uncomfortable and awkward because we don't have confidence in the relationship. We feel like we're bothering someone, and we don't want to be rejected, and we feel like a failure asking, right? This is some heavy feelings, friends. And I wonder how much of that we carry into our fundraising, listening, going to those places. All right. Now, remember a time when you shared a super special gift or invitation with someone you knew was going to be delighted to say yes. Again, take a moment, close your eyes, cast your mind back to that story in your own personal narrative, and think about where you were. Who did you ask? What was the invitation? What was the gift that you wanted to share? And how did you know they were going to be delighted to say yes? Okay. Really sit and feel those feelings. And I'll invite you back into the room now. With whom did you share this invitation? friend. Nice. Client. Family members. Yeah. It seems like we've got some pretty strong relationships with these individuals. They're people that we're close to, chosen family, a close friend, someone special, a spouse. Yeah, great. Thanks so much. We're going to move to the next slide now. So it seems like we've had some pretty solid relationships with these people. Moving now to the next question. How did you know they would be delighted to say yes? Because when you asked that question, you knew they were going to say yes. How did you know that they were going to say yes? And sometimes we don't really think about this, but when we do, we can understand the process we followed. How did you know they would be delighted to say yes? Because they're your people. Nice. They're happy to share your joy. Beautiful. It would enrich their life. That's interesting. Previously, we felt like we were a bother or a burden. But in this scenario, we thought that whatever the invitation was would enrich this person's life. There was a relationship, that closeness in the relationship that enabled us to be confident that they would say yes. It would actually help them grow. They were also passionate about what we were sharing. And we knew it was something that they would love as well. Front row seats to Hamilton is pretty great. Yeah, it'd be hard pressed to find someone who'd say no to Hamilton. Great. So if we sort of look back to the previous scenario and compare it to this, in that scenario we weren't too sure whether they'd say yes. We felt like we were a bother and burden, that they might be obligated to say yes. But here we know that it would enrich their life. There's a strong relationship there, and it would be something that would actually add value to their work. So now, take a moment and really feel this. Please, really feel this. How did you feel when you shared this invitation and when you shared this gift that was super special? How did you feel? Excited. Great. Thrilled. Felt joy, relief, felt really proud, felt fulfilled. Most of us felt very excited. That's the biggest word up on the screen. And felt great, or great. Wonderful. So if you compare this set of feelings with the set of feelings that we've just looked at in a few of the previous slides, these are feelings that make me feel like they're helium to our world, whereas the others feel like they're rocks that we could carry. When we look at our mindset in each of these scenarios, we, in that first scenario, felt like we were a burden. In the second scenario, felt like we were enriching our world. First scenario, we had some relationships that we were connecting with. And in that second scenario, we also had relationships. But it just also felt like the quality of those relationships were deeper, and we had more confidence in those relationships. And in terms of what we thought the other person would value, in that first scenario, thought that we would be a bother, whereas in the second scenario, knew that it would actually add value to that world. So what if we could take some of these same principles that we practice regularly in every day, when we invite people over for dinner, when we invite people over for a wedding, whatever it might be. What if we could actually take some of these principles and apply it to our fundraising? So that's what we're going to dive into now. I want to encourage us to sort of really reflect on not only the principles that we're going to cover, but the mindsets that we've just sort of looked at, because it's those stories that will then play out into how we engage with these principles, which will then play out into the outcome of whether we build that mutually enriching partnership that's enduring for the long run, or whether that partnership is something that has a lot of friction in it. So, how are we going, by the way? Good, fantastic, great, thank you for the interaction. Step one, we go with generosity. I want to share with you an experience that I had when I was working in face-to-face fundraising. So this was one of my first roles. The task was to stand in the shopping centre, connect with random strangers who would become friends very soon, and invite them after they made a donation to ongoing monthly sponsorship. And I loved this job. I was very, very, very awkward when I first started the role, which actually was a neighbourhood marketing role. So I was door knocking from door to door. It was very awkward, but received some training, some shift in perspective, and by God's grace was doing really well. Because I was doing really well, it was rated number 1 in my region. They promoted me. And with the new role came new targets. And I went from shift after shift after shift after shift, connecting genuinely with people and giving them a gift that I knew was going to bring them great joy, to then going shift after shift after shift after shift of not connecting with anyone at all. This was a time when we had a 3 shifts and you're out rule. So if you didn't connect with someone in 3 shifts, they would invite you to move on and continue your story of fundraising in another space. And so for me, I had these 2 fears of, oh my goodness, like there was this sort of status that I wanted to maintain, and there was this fear of keeping my job. And thank God for people who coach. And so I had my coach come alongside me and talk to me about some stats. And I had some further reflections, and I realized that actually my role for me, yes, I was employed to build meaningful connections with people, invite them to sponsor a child on an ongoing basis. But for me, the first and foremost role was to love the person in front of me. And what had happened was I was so focused on what I needed that it was right in front of me. And when we have our own needs right in front of us, we honestly don't get to see the person in front of us. And when we're so focused on what we need, that person becomes an opportunity for us to take what we need for our own benefit. And that is no way to build a genuine relationship, and that is no way to build an enduring relationship. And is it scary when we've got partners that we're working with and programs that we want to see keep going, when we're thinking about funds? Absolutely, it's scary. Is it high stakes? Yeah. But the way to actually build that ongoing partnership is to see the people in front of us as people, and not as opportunities to leverage for our gain, but as people with whom we can build relationship and really bless and really care for in that partnership. And the first way to do that is to understand that what we carry is super special. What we carry is super special. An opportunity to partner in meaningful work, an opportunity to contribute resources towards changing lives and changing systems, an opportunity to really be changed in the process. I know for me in my fundraising journey, I've learned lots on how to tell stories, and it's been a space where I recognise where my wounds are and how to then find healing in those for that somewhere else, and continue to engage in fundraising in a way that's really honouring. So understand what we carry is super special. The next thing is that we need to understand that who we're looking for is super special. And what I mean by that is, how many people in this room love coffee? Amazing. I'm definitely not one of those people. So if someone invited me to enjoy a really good cup of coffee that smelled amazing, I would say no, particularly because it gets me anxious. And so if someone, on the other hand, invited me to enjoy a home-brewed cup of chai with some ginger and cardamom, I would be all over that. And so who we're looking for is super special. That doesn't sort of diminish the value of what we carry if someone says no, because they might be a chai drinker and not a coffee drinker, right? And they might be focused on prevention work and not on rehabilitation work, or they might be focused on education of young people as opposed to strategic reform. And so part of this process involves one, understanding and really coming behind what we do, regardless of how many other people are doing something similar in the field, and then just understanding that we're looking for someone special as well. And we're gonna get some no's along the way, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So we're gonna take a moment now to ask ourselves, how can we activate curiosity, joy, and generosity pretty much every day before we engage in these relationships? How can we activate curiosity, joy, and generosity when we're engaging in fundraising? Seeing some blank looks in the room. Sure.
You mean like within ourselves or
Yes.
also the person we talk to?
Within ourselves. How can we, at the very beginning of our interaction, before we meet with anyone, really be filled with joy, be filled with curiosity about what that person cares about, and be filled with this generosity of wanting to share this gift of partnership. Okay, we can make it personal. We can keep reminding ourselves of our vision, purpose, and calling. We can practice gratitude, which is fantastic. Love what we're talking about. And keep the passions for our work aligned. Okay. We can be prepared. And lay down the drive for success. These are all really, really great suggestions. I'd invite us just to reflect on one of the practices we engaged in just a few moments ago, where we actually thought about a memory and a moment in our life where we shared a super special gift or invitation with someone who would be delighted to say yes. The beautiful thing about the brain is when we think about those memories, all of those memories and neural pathways are activated in our brain. And so when you think about a moment where you invited someone to a really special dinner or to the front row tickets of Hamilton, all of those neural pathways of excitement, joy, generosity are activated, which means that when you're engaging with the rest of your day, those pathways are already activated. And so what I used to do, what I'd encourage us to do is, even before we step out of our rooms tomorrow morning, if we're wanting to genuinely connect with the people that we meet, maybe just think about a time when you shared a super special gift with someone and let your body feel all those emotions, and then step out of your room. If you're about to pick up the call once you go home, once you go home, maybe before you pick up the phone to talk with that strategic partner, think about a moment where you shared a super special gift or invitation with someone. And the more you practice it, the more your brain gets used to it, and the more you can easily step in and out. So, give that a go. And again, it does take some practice. Give yourself grace. but it's something that has really been a game changer for me. We're going to practice, not right now, but in a moment. But keep this in mind. All right, step 2, we're going to cultivate relationship. Cultivate relationship. I think the key difference in the story that I told you about how I was doing really well, promoted, and then not doing really well, was that I forgot to see the person as a person. I forgot to actually build a relationship with them and instead saw them as an opportunity to further myself, right? And so the second step in fundraising and genuinely connecting is to cultivate relationship. And the key word is cultivate. Cultivation takes time, friends. And so if we think about a garden, we can plant a seed, but it doesn't actually grow overnight. What it does take is consistent care, nurture, watering, so that that seed can then bloom into something that is beautiful and then something that's strong. And so cultivating relationship takes time. And cultivating relationship with folks that we meet at Arat requires, you might connect with someone this year and it might be a no for ongoing partnership, but you might meet them again next year and you might meet them again the year after, and your programs might have changed and their focus might have changed so that you can then build that partnership in a way that's really mutually enriching. They want to be a part of it, and you're sharing resources in a way that's really beautiful. So basically, we need to focus on intent. We need to focus on going with generosity. We need to focus on really paying attention in that particular moment. So especially at Arat, I think when you're in a coffee conversation, you can talk to the person in front of you, but your eyes could also be roaming around you to connect with the next person. And if you've been in that scenario where you're connecting with someone and their eyes are moving, it's not a great feeling, right? Not a great feeling. So, if we're in a room, if we're connecting with someone, let's be fully present and let's be genuinely connecting with that person. And that same goes to when we're on the phone. If we're cultivating a relationship on the phone or in a virtual appointment, let's not be thinking about our next appointment. Hey, let's just be fully present and engaged with that particular person. And let's allow for that relationship to grow over time with intention, right? With intention. With intention. It might just start off as a few virtual connections after Arat. It might grow into something more, but let's genuinely connect and allow that the time required for this beautiful seed of a relationship to grow into something that's bigger and stronger. All right, so how can we cultivate a relationship? And go. Something as small as eye contact goes a long way. Follow up? Yes. We can eat together, absolutely. Intentional check-ins, active listening, regular conversation, we can be genuine, and we can share our time. Absolutely. We can be funny. Humor goes a long way. And we can be genuine, we can smile, be warm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So these are all wonderful ways to cultivate relationship. We can say their name. Care about the person, not just what they can offer. Yeah, that's huge, right? Huge. Sometimes when we're cultivating relationships or connection, especially at a conference, we can be like, hey, are we going to work? And then we can very quickly move on from one person to another. And I understand that the time that we have is precious. But I think when we care about the person, not just what they can offer, it's an absolute game changer. All right. Thanks so much for your participation. We're going to practice this again in some time. Now we're going to move on to step 3. So we're going to learn values. Ruth, what is a value? Well, values are basically values, each of us, whether we know it or not, live by certain values. It determines what we say yes to and what we say no to in life, right? Whether we go to that dinner or that we have a nap, whether we eat, whether we eat the granola, whether we eat dessert, whether we eat one dessert, whether we eat two desserts, whatever it might be, all our lives and our decisions are guided by values. And the important thing is, so are our partners, right? And a value is basically anything that is important to someone. Anything that is important to someone. And our language and our actions are filled with values. We just need to learn how to pick them up. A value can be shared expressly or implicitly through body language or through conversation. So we're going to have a few examples up on the screen, and we're going to have a crack at trying to understand from those statements what is important to the person who would have said those statements. So feel free to call it out when that sentence comes on the screen. So if you're chatting with someone at Ararat and they said, I learn so much when I come to Ararat, what is, from that statement, what is important to the person who shared that with you? Learning, absolutely. Learning is really important to you. If you were chatting with someone and they said that I feel so supported when I come to Ararat, like I'm a part of a community, what would you say is really important to someone who shared that? Connection, absolutely. What was that? Connection, yeah. Connection, support, and feeling like they were a part of a community. And if you connected with someone and they said, look, when I come to Ararat, I feel like we're all making a difference together. Collaboration, yeah, absolutely. And so when people are sharing statements like this, what we need to be thinking is, hey, what's important to this person? Which then connects to the next step. We listen with our ears and also with our eyes. So if they, and that's a whole nother talk on body language. Once you start reading people's body language, it changes the game, especially in your interpersonal relationships. You said yes, but your body didn't say yes. You moved away. What's going on? But that's another conversation. So we listen with our eyes and our ears, and we ask good questions. We ask good questions, really with the focus on getting to know the person. They might represent a family foundation, they might represent a government organisation, they might represent a bunch of things. They're a person first and foremost, and you're a person first and foremost. And so when we ask good questions, we get to connect on a deeper level. We get to connect and learn the values of the person in front of us, but also the organisation they represent, which then enables us to build relationships that are very much values-based, and because they're values-based, can be far more enduring. And who knows that it's far more easier to build and nourish a values-aligned partnership than to manage a partnership that is actually not suitable from the get-go, right? So, you're at Ararat. What are some questions we could ask to learn about what's important to the person in front of us? I'm going to continue coughing away from the mic, guys. You might think about some questions that you've been asked during coffee catch-ups, over lunch, or over breakfast. What brings you joy? Yeah. It's important to you. What inspired you to get into this work? People's origin stories are really beautiful. It's like talking about so people have relationships, and they have relationships with people, but also with their work. And so when you ask people about their origin story with their work, it's like taking them back to their first love with their work, and that can be really special, even if what they're engaging with now is really hard. And so to ask people, hey, what motivated you to get into this work? can be really, really powerful, really powerful. Yeah, what's your connection to this conference? Or which sessions impacted you the most? Yeah. So I find that asking, like again, the origin stories, the connection to the work, and also just asking people what are they most excited about in terms of their work and their organisation. Or what are the 3 biggest challenges that the organisation is facing? Because as we connect with people, maybe we and that particular person might not gel well and it might not be a suitable partnership, but we're in a very big room at the moment. And even if we can't connect well with the person in front of us, we might talk to someone else at tomorrow's coffee catch up and they might be a fantastic fit. And so we can then connect those 2 people up together. And that builds builds rapport, builds collaboration, and can build relational capital with that particular person for the future. Not that that is the main motivating fact, but you can do that. Alright, we are going to practice these principles shortly. Step 4 is to share a story. Share story. So now this actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of values, right? The beautiful thing about story, and I'm not gonna unpack how we craft story in an ethical way that is compelling and impactful. Please go to Lucy's session tomorrow on that. But I'm sure many of us have in this room told story over and over again. I found in my personal experience what's been really compelling is having the stories prepared in long form and short form on 3 different topics. So for example, for the person who told us that they really value learning at Arat, maybe there's a story on education or on prevention work that your organisation does that you can then bring into the conversation. For the person who said that they really love being a part of the community, maybe there's a story that we can share about how a particular community has been impacted and benefited by the work that we've done. And for the person who said that they enjoyed, goodness, what was the 3rd example? Collaboration. Maybe we can think about a story about strategic reform and collaboration and networking that has benefited us and a bunch of other people as well. So have 3 different stories on 3 different topics prepared in long form and in short form. And as we're listening to people share their values, what we need to really be thinking about is what kind of partnership opportunity would most resonate with the person in front of us. So we're not focusing on what our biggest need is, we're focusing on what are the different needs of our particular organisation, and of those particular needs, which partnership opportunity would bring the most joy to the person in front of us. And how can I share it in language that is meaningful to the person in front of us? What do I mean by that? So if someone has used the terms exploited labour, then in our storytelling, even if we've prepared a story that uses the term in human trafficking, we then incorporate the words exploited labour. If they've used language that talks about prevention, then we use those words when we are sharing the story. And why do we do this? We're not trying to trick the person in front of us. What we're trying to do is communicate the value of the work that we're doing in ways that are accessible to the person in front of us, so that they feel like we are the same people, that we're on the same team, because really we are, right? And it would be a shame if the person in front of us didn't feel like we're the same people just because we're using synonyms for words that we could really swap out the words that they're using. If anyone has been into a shop to buy a mobile phone or to buy anything from a particular sales representative, I'm sure you would notice this particular technique. But they're utilising this technique for good, friends, for good. Alright, step 5, joyfully invite. Joyfully invite. And step 5 really is an overflow of steps 1 to 4. When we connect with someone and we go with generosity and we understand the value of what we bring and we understand that we're looking for a very special person, And then we take time to learn their values and learn that, hey, the cause that we represent is really something that lands with this particular person. They really care deeply about prevention. They really care deeply about strategic collaboration across countries. Then we share story and we're listening with our eyes and our ears and they're nodding, and we come to the conclusion that actually they really want in on what we want to share. Like, they want in on this. And when we recognize that what we're sharing is an invitation that will bring them joy, it automatically brings us joy. Like, we get excited because we know that what we're going to share is going to bring joy and excitement to the person in front of us. And so the joyful invitation is really an overflow of engaging in steps 1 to 4 and engaging in them genuinely. Okay, so we've talked about how we can cultivate mutually enriching values-aligned partnership, and that is to go with generosity, to cultivate relationship, learn values, share story, and joyfully invite. So, imagine bringing these same principles to your everyday fundraising spaces. What we're going to have a crack at doing today is we're going to practice. You might say, Ruth, I don't have 3 pre-prepared stories, long and short form, I'm not ready for that. Great, no dramas at all. So what we are actually going to do is sort of reflect back on a couple of the experiences that we've had at this conference. We've all had breakfast, we've all had lunch, and we've all gone out to dinner with a bunch of people, right? And so what we're going to do is take a moment to pair and share with the person next to us. And the invitation is going to be either food, drink, or an experience in Chiang Mai. Food, drink, or an experience in Chiang Mai, right? And we're going to actually utilize the principles we've learned today to share food, drink, or an experience in Chiang Mai that would bring the person in front of us joy, right? Drawing from our own experiences in Chiang Mai. One of us is going to take about 2 minutes to lead that conversation, and then we're going to swap out, and the next person is going to lead that conversation. Again, this is just play. There is 0 performance in this. We're just going to have a crack at learning and practicing some of the principles that we've learned. Okay, and there's low stakes, like very low stakes, very low stakes. Okay, so we're going to have a few minutes to do that. So find a friend, feel free to get up and move, or hang out with your friend that's nearby, and practice these principles. How we going? We reached the 2-minute mark, so if you'd like to wrap up, it was very fast. If you'd like to wrap up that conversation and then move to partner leading the conversation, that would be wonderful. We've got another few minutes. Okay, so let's wrap up those conversations. When you're ready, Bring it in. Bring it back in, Sam. Bring it in. Amazing. Hey, it sounds like there have been some really cool conversations in the room, and it's fantastic to hear. And I want to just encourage us. I know we've gone through some principles, but we kind of do this on a regular basis every day with a bunch of things. When we invite friends over to dinner, when we tell them to jump online to get this really cute dress, or when we tell them where we've got our cute shoes, or which perfume we're wearing, like all we do is we want to share something that's super special. We've got relationship with that person. We know that what we're sharing is really important to them. We share a story about how that perfume or those shoes were great, and then we tell them where to go and get them. And so the principles that we actually have outlined today, we already practice. And if we can actually practice these principles when we're engaging with partners and building genuine relationships with partners, it would be an absolute game changer. So please continue to chat about great places to eat, drink, and experiences in Chiang Mai, whether it's an elephant sanctuary or the city waterfalls or whatever else it might be. And if you're sticking around in Chiang Mai a little bit after the conference, then you can definitely go and play and experience those joys. So, we've been on quite the journey, friends. We've gone to some deep places, talked about some of the stories that has impacted the way we actually approach fundraising. And so, I'm curious, well, we've learned some principles for practice in our interpersonal relationships, and the key word there is practice, because we will need to practice these principles in our interpersonal relationships. Try it with friends and family members. As long as the invitation you're sharing is ethical and is not manipulative, like try these principles with your family members and see how they land. We learnt, again, that these principles for me, in my experience, have been really powerful, really beautiful, and can be applied across the board in your interpersonal relationships. Covered these principles, we know that we need to go with generosity, we need to cultivate relationship, learn values, share story, and as a result, the overflow is to joyfully invite. So I'm curious, and having gone through those processes or those steps, that's how we actually build enduring, values-aligned, and mutually enriching partnerships. But the key point is to go ahead and take the time to really process some of those big feelings that we talked about at the beginning in terms of our stories and how they impact the way we give and the way we invite others. Because these principles are beautiful principles, but if we haven't shifted the stories that we live in, those will be the same stories that we live out of. Okay? So, we've talked about some big things, and I'm curious, what was the most significant shift in your fundraising story as a result of our hour together today? What was the most significant shift? And if you need to go home and journal and think about that, then absolutely go home and do that. But if you can, in 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say has been the most significant shift in terms of your mindset and your fundraising story? Nice. To view what we're sharing as an opportunity and not a burden. Amazing. To see what we're sharing as a special gift to give, to go with joy, and not apprehension. Feeling more joyful about sharing the opportunities we have to offer. I'm seeing a lot of joy there, which is fantastic. Yeah, what are my org's needs that would bring the donor the most joy? And that's really important. It's not to put the donor first. That's not what this is about. This is not about shifting our programs and in a way that will make the donor happy, but is completely apart and away from our vision. We don't want to propagate organizational shift in any way, shape or form, but it's about understanding like what are our needs and what of those needs would bring the donor the most joy. Yeah. And I want to also just touch on something we mentioned in terms of sharing story and the language that we use. Sometimes the language that our donors are using or us partners are using might indicate that they might not have a solid understanding of what's happening on the ground. So if they're using language that is not respectful or language that propagates a narrative that is not something that we want to actually share, we can come alongside them, and instead of using the language that they use to share story, we can start using different language that would bring them from that story to another story, right? And I've been the recipient of so much grace, and I've journeyed in the way I've told stories, and people have been very kind in terms of the research that they've shared with me about beautiful, powerful women. And so that's definitely something we can incorporate into our storytelling. So thanks so much for sharing these. Next question. What's the most insightful practical tool that we learned today? The most insightful practical tool that we learned today. Story. Nice. Joyfully invite. Build a relationship with the person. First key. Great. Make connection. Go with generosity and not need. Storytelling. Preparing free stories in long and short form. And listen genuinely. Amazing. So, practice with joy. Connect to values. Ooh. It's like there's a bunch of different practical tools that we've learned. The abundance mindset, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so in light of the shift in our story and in light of the practical learning, what is your next reasonable step? In light of the shift in your story and the practical learning, what is your next reasonable step? Nice. Prepare the stories, compile a list of who we can share with, get to know partners better, learn what's important to the person and act on that. Practice. Identify our own values. That's a huge part of fundraising, right? Identify like what are our negotiables, where are our non-negotiables, where can we pivot, and where will we stand firm in terms of what we will do and what we won't do. Okay, all right. No one's going to follow you up on this next. No one. But we've put up a list of action steps, and I'd love for us to pull out our phones, look at our calendars. In the next 2 weeks, like how much time would we need to practice the stories? How much time would we need to prep them in long and short form? Whatever your action step might look like, pull out your calendar, have a look at the next 2 weeks and go, okay, where in my calendar can I do that? And pop it in. No one is going to follow you up on this because you're making to yourself. And when you're done, just give me the thumbs up. we've all made commitments to ourselves in our calendars. And if not now, maybe during the coffee break, you can pop a time into your calendar of when you're going to actually action that action step. It has been such a joy to hang out and to share story and to share some of these insights that I found super helpful and have actually brought me joy. I've gone from awkward ass to like really loving fundraising because I realised that actually I'm giving something to the person in front of me. I'm not asking them for anything. And I don't feel like I'm a bother because I've taken the time to understand what they really care about, understand their capacity, and then I share with them something that's really going to bring them joy. And so I hope and I pray that in your fundraising journey that the shift from awkward ask to joyful invitation would just bring you so much joy, and that would enable you to work more sustainably in the spaces where you work. One of the ways that I actually connect with people is through providing coaching. And so if this has been super fun, please feel free to jump on the website. And if you're in a face-to-face fundraising space and you'd love someone to walk alongside you, that would be one of my favorite things to do. So please feel free to connect. And also, sometimes fundraising just feels like we're climbing a mountain, which is why we've designed a masterclass called The Mountain, where we can understand our value proposition, identify assets, and actually build genuine partnerships. If you actually have really loved, okay, that launches in September, and it's capped at 10, and just so that we actually really facilitate that conversation and learning. But if we have more than 10 people who are keen, we can probably do it in a few months' time as well. If you've loved what we've shared and you're like, hey, I would have really liked to practice that, you can also do the art of the invitation extended edition. So feel free to jump online and have a look at that as well. And I'd love to know how I could love and serve better. So please feel free to fill out a feedback form. You can find links to all three of those just by scanning the QR code. That brings us to the end of our time together, friends. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your participation, for being real, for going back and into your own personal stories, and for jumping on board and sharing your learning as well. Do we have any questions?
Well done, Ruth.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah's hooked me up with so many medicines throughout today. Cold and flu, lozenges, and it's given me like a wonderful boost to be here. So thank you, Sarah. Do we have any questions? If not, we can wrap up. But I'll stick around if you guys have any questions. Thank you. Sure.
One of the issues that we come across is corporates who then want like an experience day. Like we're not a public shelter where they can come, clean out the. We're not a homeless where they can come and feed the. What do we do?
What kind of experience? Well, that sounds really hard. First,
we had a thing at one of the old places where I worked, where they were so insistent that they come and do something, that we said, okay, look, you can come and paint the office. We've meant 2 days of us having to move all this really confidential information and set it up. They came over the weekend, which meant 2 staff members over 2 floors had to be there all weekend so that these bankers could come in and paint our walls. We came in on Monday, they'd done such a piss poor job of it. We had to pay someone to come in and repaint our walls, which was another 2 days, because that cost us more money than they funded us. But every time that we need something that goes in our annual report, and we need something that makes us look good to give the funding, we're not inviting you to meet with our clients. That is not. So, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in those circumstances, at the very beginning of that relationship building, we've got to understand, look, what's the story that everyone comes to this space with need, right? And if a particular organisation or company wants to participate for their own sort of satisfaction, for their annual report, for their social corporate responsibility, for their personal brand, one question to ask ourselves is like, is this a partnership that we actually want, right? Are we values aligned on this particular partnership? Another question is to ask is, okay, if they want an experience, what's the value underneath that? They want to feel like they want to be making a difference. Okay. Well, what do we need? And that aligns with their skill set. If they're bankers, is there something that they can assist with in terms of finance, right? Can they provide us an audit free of charge from time to time, right? So it's about understanding that our partners come to the table with need as well, and wondering whether, like really questioning whether it's a values aligned partnership, and if we do want to serve our partners, how can we play to their strengths in a way that doesn't result in 4 days of exhaustion and money and time and effort. That sounds really hard, Chloe. Really hard.
It was possibly better than the time that some corporate decided to help produce food for an iftar, and none of it was halal, which was great. Anyway, the joys of corporate engagement.
And I think also it's because they're not on the ground. They don't know the need on the ground. They have resources and they have a desire to assist, but they don't necessarily know how to assist. And so if you have the time, space and energy to allow that partnership to be an education process as well, then it could potentially lead to a really beautiful partnership. But it takes a great deal of patience to build that understanding and be that bridge.
Yeah. Thank you.
It is past 5 o'clock, so we'll wrap up. But if anyone has any other questions, please, please come on down, and I'm more than happy to chat. Thanks so much, friends. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Go to the wellness room. Thanks.
And you honestly
So I keep trying to look away from me, but I feel like that was so much. I don't want to make you.
It's right, I balance you out. I'm sitting here going, yes.
Co-regulate.
There's always been about being together.
Yes. Not yet. Yeah, so if you scan the QR code, depending on what say that you're sorry, I'm Hindi and Indonesian. Not all of my dad signing in shares. Yes, yeah. I wanted to come to the Indonesian catch-ups, but I've been really slow, so I'm just getting very impressive there. There are specific I'm so lost in touch there. I'm saying the name to be able to realize to be so it just needs,
What are you gonna do? Tonight? Everybody know that?
Thank you so much.
Yes. But second, not
I'm sure.
Like,